like to welcome you to our first episode. This is Energy Medicine for Planet Earth. Today we've got Dr. Gary Kersey with us. Dr. Gary Kersey is the founder of Quantum Care Research and Development, LLC, as well as Biotheric Medicine. Gary, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So, you are Dr. Gary Kersey, and you are also the founder of Biotheric Energy Medicine and Quantum Care LLC, Research and Development.
Right.
I would just like to hear a little bit about your background, if we could start off with that. And you, I know personally, and also that you have really developed some amazing technologies for folks that are so helpful. I use them myself. And I'd like to know how your association with different types of alternative medicine and conventional medicine as well, perhaps, I'll find out, and so will we all, has brought you to where you are with the marvelous technology of the Biotheric Discs.
Well, I went into practice in 1979, and I graduated as a chiropractic physician, but I did have a background. I had a bachelor's degree in psychology and human biology, and I've always been interested in how people think and their emotions. But when I graduated, of course, I was focused more on the physical world, and my practice was eclectic, which meant that every weekend I had something new that I had added to the practice. And I wanted my goal to be whoever walked in the door, I could help them, no matter what was wrong with them. Unless, of course, it was something like an emergency room thing or something that they required medical care. And most of the patients that came to me, they had already gone through the medical system and it had failed them. That's why they would come to me to see if I had alternatives. In fact, that's what they even call it, alternative medicine. Many books refer to what I do as alternative medicine. And so I started adding in acupuncture and herbs, homeopathic medicines, and meditation, and hypnosis and NLP, every letter of the alphabet. If there was a seminar, if there was a seminar, I went to it. And I didn't care where it was or what state it was in. I went there. I even went to Germany a few times and Austria. And I wanted to have the best of the best for my patients. And I started realizing I had to collect a lot of tools. Somewhere along the line, I started noticing that everybody's problems started on the spiritual level. And then that would filter down through the emotional and mental. And in the early years, I'd had no idea what that meant. If someone came up and told me that, I would just stare at them. I wouldn't know what they were referring to. But after 30 years of practice, you start learning and you start observing. And I started noticing that if I wanted to really get to the root cause of why a person was sick, I had to look to the spiritual level and begin to help them make corrections. And then that would trickle down to the mental and the emotional. And near the end of my practice, every seminar I went to, whoever was speaking, they always would give a list of things that made people sick. They'd have a list of 5, sometimes 10. Obviously, dietary, poor diet would be on there somewhere. But do you know what was always at the top was emotional imbalance? And again, that would have never made sense to me 30 years ago. I couldn't have comprehended that. But I now realize that when the spiritual is out of balance and the emotional gets out of balance, that affects energy flow, which in turn affects your organs and your tissues, which in turn will cause disease. And there's nothing wrong with attacking your disease. You can go to all the doctors you want. That's fine. Maybe you should. But the point is, if you want to really get well, you have to get to the cause, the root cause. And to do that, you have to ask the question, where did this come from? So you start working backward. And when you do that, you get into the mental emotional realm. And that is what needs to be worked on. So my practice became heavily directed towards observing and correcting, helping patients correct emotional baggage, blocked emotional energy flow, etc.
Okay. And when you say balance, how would you characterize a balanced individual or somebody who's in a balanced state with their emotional life and or their spiritual life?
Well, the one word scientists like is homeostasis,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're in the middle and you're not too far outside. You're not too far to the right. You're not too far to the left. You're just moving along in a balanced state. And if something comes along in your life that's a stress, um, you process it. You know how to process that, and you clear it, and then you move on. It doesn't become a large issue for you. So whether something and of course, just by living on Earth, you're going to have a physical issue somewhere along the line, and a mental
Mm-hmm.
and an emotional. Somewhere along the line, you're going to have a challenge. And if you're spiritually balanced, you'll be able to get back to the middle, back to the status quo, and be able to process what you're going through. And that's kind of our goal, is to get into a state of homeostasis and balance.
So would you say that it's something akin to accepting what you can't change, changing what you can? That sort of, because it doesn't sound to me like you're attached to any dogma or theological stance in this work whatsoever, even though you're using the term spiritual. Could you speak to that just a little?
Yes, and you're right. There's a big difference when you deal with religion. You then deal with dogma, and you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have certain ideas, certain opinions. Uh, there was a large church here in town, and they reached a certain size, and then all of a sudden there was infighting. So then they split apart. Then there was two churches. Much the same way we got our bodies. We started out as two cells coming together, the egg and the sperm. Then there was two cells, and then next thing you know, there was four, and then those divided. Then there was eight. It's just part of the life process, and so with we do that with the church. We get to certain levels where we then get uncomfortable, and we have to split and move in a different direction. And what we want to do is stay in a state of balance by not attaching to any one specific belief system. And the more you can do that, the more balanced you're going to be.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the balanced state is acceptance and a certain degree of non-attaching to non-clinging, letting go of perhaps trauma, um, things that are perceived to be uh, uh, a threat or harmful. How do you think that the balance between the body and the mind sits when it comes to sort of like overthinking, thinking things through, or just being in a physical state of ease? Does the ease of the mind contribute to the ease of the body, or the ease of the body contribute to the ease of the mind? Do you have any thoughts on that as we're on this subject?
Well, it's kind of a two-way street in some ways. So I always explain to people, all imbalance starts on the spiritual level and it trickles
Mm-hmm.
down. However,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it is a two-way street. For example, uh, if a person has a certain issue with their liver, they may crave alcohol. Then if they drink too much alcohol, that makes the liver worse. If they stop drinking the alcohol, the liver starts getting better. But the liver, uh, the main emotion, one of them for the liver is anger. So we associate energetically anger with the liver. If a person has a lot of anger in them, that will damage the liver to the point where they will become physically ill. And therefore, for that person to actually heal the liver, and again, we're not saying you shouldn't do nutrition, diet, herbs, etc. Those are all very helpful. But if you want to actually get to the root cause of a person's liver problem, it's possible you would need to deal with their anger. And once you resolve that, the liver gets well and you're done. That's the end of it.
So basically what you've seen in your practice is, and in this basis for understanding, is that there are cycles. So maybe an angry liver is going to crave more damage to itself. It sounds like there are self-perpetuating cycles that the technology that you've developed will interrupt.
Well, we know that if we want to address certain types of emotions and mental imbalances, there are various systems out there, some of which are ancient. I mean, going back 5,000 years, and I'm talking about acupuncture, or what they call traditional Chinese medicine, uh, which addresses many emotional things. Also, flower essences are very powerful. Also, things called gem stones, gem elixirs, uh, special medicines made out of gemstones. Those will affect the emotions. So there are various systems that are ancient that have been used for many, many, many years to balance out these problems. And the one thing that made the biotheric system unique is that we have a technology that we can take all those things I just mentioned, all those various systems, the acupuncture, the herbs, the flower essence, the gemstones, even the homeopathic medicines, even things like affirmations, and even some other things that we can talk about another time. All of those things have a frequency that's specific. And if we have a technology where we can take those frequencies and download them into crystals. So now, if a person has an issue with anger or fear or forgiveness, they want to work with their forgiveness, they can get our disc, which is a round little disc that contains crystals that have been programmed with various frequencies. And then using that disc, they can begin to reverse and heal whatever emotional imbalance they want to work on. And it is very effective and works very quickly sometimes to help people get back into a state of balance.
I concur, because I've used your discs and I wasn't expecting them. It wasn't that I was not expecting, but your discs have changed my life, and I'm super excited to be able to speak with you and to also share this with other people, because I see it genuinely as an amazing technology, and above that, a very, very gentle technology that doesn't interfere with anything. And I'm just, I don't want to get into your. I know that there are proprietary methods that you use to create these, but how did it ever come to you, all this? Did are you would you are you comfortable sharing that?
I think that looking back in the last 30 years of my practice, I can see very clearly that there were guideposts uh,
Mhm.
along the way, and I would well, I can say this: many years ago, I was told that physicians were special on the spiritual level, and so I took that to mean that I'm not saying I felt like we were better than other people, but I felt like since we have the ability to help heal people, we were somehow better than other professions. And I that's what I believed in the beginning. But eventually I learned that was absolutely not correct. Uh,
Mhm.
the reason the reason the physician is special over other people, we get to see people come into us day after day after day, hundreds and thousands of people having various kinds of problems in their life, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. We get to see what they've been through. We get to connect with them. We get to do some type of an analysis with them. We get to select a therapy of some kind, and we get to see them get well. And that is very exciting. So that's why physicians sometimes are special. Not that we're better than anybody else, because we're not, but we have the advantage of being able to see thousands of people with certain problems, and we can learn what it is that upsets a person's life, and we can learn how to get them back on track. And so I explored many different things, and that partly is based on my personality uh, and my astrology. It doesn't mean I'm smarter than anyone else. It's just that I would learn something new, and instead of sticking with that for 30 years, I go, "Wow, this is fantastic. I wonder if there's anything else that's good out there." And I would find something else new, and I would add that in. And then after I used that for a month, I would say, "Oh my, I love this. This is fantastic. Gee, I wonder if there's something else just as good." And I would then go to another seminar, another training, and so I would just add in. So it turned into an eclectic style practice, as opposed to a practice that only went in one narrow direction. Uh, Certain practices out there are very narrow. They do the same thing over and over and over. The example I use, there's a doctor here in town that brags about doing, I forget what the number is, it's in the thousands of, cataract surgeries. And that's all he does. And I got to thinking about that. After about a week, I couldn't do it. I'd go nuts. I'd have to move on to something else. But he served the purpose, because if I ever had to have a cataract surgery, would I want to go to somebody that's done 100 cataract surgeries or 100,000 cataract surgeries? I would want to go to the guy that has done 100,000. So I'm not knocking what the guy does. It's wonderful. But my personality was to expand. So I began to add in the flower essences and the homeopathic remedies and the gemstones and the affirmations. I added in all the things that I learned in my 30 years, and I crammed them into a disc. So a person is actually getting a disc with crystals that has my knowledge of 30 years. And that's why they work so well.
Yes, and you have and every disc is different and addresses different issues.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, yep,
Yeah,
yep,
all
and
programmed. Yeah, they're all programmed differently. They're all uh, completely different. They have an energy field of their own. People that are energy sensitive can feel them. Uh, in other words, if I and I've done this research with people,
Mm-hmm.
mainly out of my own curiosity. I could have them close their eyes. I could hand them a disc that has not been programmed, and they feel nothing, except they feel the plastic in their hand, but they don't feel anything else. I then, without telling them, I say, "What do you notice here?" And I hand them a programmed disc, and they always say, "Oh wow, this is very interesting." They can feel energy coming off of the disc. So the discs do have a life of their own. They are actual energy balancing tools, and that's why they work so well.
And when did you first make your first disc? And was it obvious to you, or was it sort of a process of trial and error?
They've been around maybe 15 years, and uh, people always say to me they wish they were more like me because I'm so open minded, and I always have to correct them that I am not that open minded. I wish I was. Uh, I tend to have a skeptical streak. So when I invent something, I make sure it really works. So many of the products that I've developed, uh, it's interesting. They've been through rigorous trials. Uh, the discs, for example, are first researched by me. Sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks to figure out the formula, sometimes a month. Once I do that, I then put them through a special screening system that falls within the realm of energy medicine. With that screening system, I can assign a number to that disc. And I need that disc to have an efficacy of at least 85 or 90% or higher. If it doesn't hit that number, that tells me I'm not done yet. Keep looking. So I would do more research. Once I hit that number, I then create the disc. We then have someone use it that needs the disc. So if someone has a certain imbalance, I have them use the disc. Then when they get back to me and say, "Holy cow, this thing's fantastic. It works great," I then make a mental note, okay, this product is done. And then that product goes on the website to be sold. So it goes through many steps to make sure it actually does what it's supposed to do.
Okay, interesting. Yes. Well, I'd like to turn the conversation now, if that's okay, to a particular disc.
Okay.
And just to end this, we've been about half an hour, and I'd like to discuss the Hope Disc with you, which is on the prayerdiscs.com website.
Oh,
And all
yes.
these links are going to be in the description box. But yeah, would you mind just speaking about that disc and letting us know what's going on there and how it can assist?
Well, I'm always looking for uh, what do we need to do to prepare ourselves for some type of a balancing. And for example, many people, um, they're afraid to get well on any level. And they don't, they say they want to get well, but they really don't. And they have reasons for that. And many times we self-punish ourselves on a conscious or a subconscious level. So I eventually created a disc called the Change Disc, and that disc can be used to prepare you for other types of healing. And I noticed that that disc proved very beneficial. So the Hope Disc is the same kind of thing. It's like if a person has no hope, then the idea is why would they even have a desire to improve their life? Why would a person want to do something to improve their financial setting? Why would a person want to make a change in their life so they'd be happier or have more joy in their life? Uh, why would a person uh, want to get healthier on the physical level if they had no hope? So hope is a very important step. You have to be able to, in the beginning, admit that you have to be able to say to yourself, I am worth getting well. I am worth feeling good, having joy. I deserve joy. I deserve to have a better income. I deserve to have better health, better physical health. You have to get to a point where you are openly admitting to yourself, consciously and subconsciously, that you're ready to get well. And one of the steps towards that is the hope disc. And without that, it's kind of like you're stuck right at the gate when the gun sounds and the horses are ready to take off running. If you just sit there on your horse, you're going to go nowhere. You need that hope disc.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. And are there different ways for folks to use this disc? Could you spend a few minutes speaking to that?
Well, to take in the energy of the disc, and I should say, some of our discs that we have very special directions, and we always give those out, of course. But most of the disc, I kind of like to let the person let their higher self guide them in how they apply the disc. You basically need to take in the frequencies that are in the disc. So to do that, you can do many things. You can sleep with it under your pillow. Sometimes you might be directed to carry it in your pocket. At this very moment, I have 6 discs that I carry at the moment in my pocket. Another way, people like to set their drinking water on top of the disc. And if you do that and set it on there overnight, it will, the next morning, the water, and remember, water is a liquid crystal. The water has memory. There are many, many, many websites that you can study on that. People can look that up. Water has memory, and it will take on the frequency of the disc. So the person could then once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, pour like a 1-ounce shot glass and put that in their mouth. I have them hold it for 15 seconds and then swallow it. And what that does is the energy in the water goes into your electrical system, your neurological system. Some people call it your meridian system. And that energy circulates all through your body. And your body actually takes on that energy. So you can, I have people basically tell me if they have a certain drive to do a certain technique, I try not to ever argue with people. I respect what their higher self is saying. So if a person tells me, I think I need to carry this with me, I would tend to say, then you should. If the person says, I think I really need this at night when I sleep, because when I sleep and go into the dream state, my body is very susceptible to energy. So I would like to put that on my pillow. With that person, I would say, sounds fantastic. Let's give it a try. I try to support the client and respect their higher self direction in how to use any particular disc.
Okay, so that sounds good. What about the using the meridians in the hands? Anything that you might want to say about that? Because it is called prayer discs, the particular set that we're going to be discussing throughout this series of podcasts.
There will be times when a person would like to use certain discs and feed those into the chakra system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a nice system to use because it goes all through the body, and the chakras are very easy to find. For example, if I had to describe a certain acupuncture point to a person, they would have some trouble finding that. Acupuncture points are very tiny. And if you want to do a good job and really focus on that point, you have to have training. But the chakras are much larger than an acupuncture point. So a person could then take a disc and place it over their solar plexus chakra or their heart chakra or their throat chakra, and they don't have to worry about not being in the right place because the chakras are large enough that when you place that disc over the chakra, it's going to go into your energy system. You're going to receive that energy. So um, there's all kinds of ways of really using the discs. I'm not sure, there's not many ways to do it wrong. There might be some specific discs that we might talk about later that we would
Mm-hmm.
certainly tell people. Yeah, we can tell people with this disc, you may want to focus on using it this way or that way. But I let people make their own choice many times.
Are the energy centers at the palms of the hand, does that sort of reach the rest of the body similar to using the imprinted water?
Yeah, that could be done.
Uh-huh.
Many
Uh-huh.
people uh, take energy into the body through the left hand. That's very common. So
Okay.
a
Okay.
person could hold the disc during meditation, and while they do their meditation or do their prayer, whichever they do, that energy will go into the energy field. Uh, you can also even set the disc next to you while you meditate. You don't necessarily have to even hold it. You can have it sitting in your lap or next to you because remember, our our energy field, we have several, but our main one comes out about 1 meter on either side of the body. So it's like a sphere. So if you lay the disc next to you, that disc is adding in many different frequencies into your personal field. So you could even do it that way.
That's great. That's just really wonderful. It's amazing that there are so many different ways, but it just does involve, it's a very personal process, it sounds like, and that it does treat the the individual's biofield, this technology.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like we have touched on some very good subjects here. Is there anything else that you'd like to add for this as we're wrapping up this podcast?
Not that I think of, except that each podcast we're going to do will cover specific discs and how they work and why they work. So those will be, I think, fascinating for people to learn uh, what they can do to make their life better by balancing out certain energies, such as spiritual and mental and emotional. And we've made it very simple and very inexpensive, too, by the way. Uh, I remember just very quickly, many years ago, there was a technique that a person could use for a phobia, and they call it a phobia cure. I think the book was called The 5 Minute Phobia Cure. And traditional psychologists would take a year to clear a phobia. And that's 1 year of paying money to work on the phobia. That comes up underneath that comes out a lot of money. So when the book came out, said 5 minute phobia cure, you can imagine how much anger that created. And the professional people were very negative towards that book. They said it was quackery and everything else. I have used that technique and many others like it. And at times it works like a miracle. And I have cleared many phobias right in the office. So the discs, many times, is a shortcut to getting what you want because of how they work and how they were designed.
Well, excellent. So that's great. Um, I would just like to thank you for your time.
You're
And
welcome.
folks, once again, this is Dr. Gary Kersey, who is the founder of Quantum Care Research and Development, LLC, and the Biotheric Energy Medicine. We're going to have links in the description box below the video to take you to where you can find these discs for yourself. And so I just say, I guess that wraps it up. Gary, thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
I look forward to speaking with you again soon, probably in about a week for our next podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice being here with you.